Welcome to Leadership Where It Matters Most. The family is the most important institution in the world. The future of the church passes through the family. The church has the greatest mission of any organization ever. Go and make disciples of all nations. The family and the church. This is where leadership matters most.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into Leadership Where It Matters Most. Today's guest is Dr. Deborah Savage, and I am just delighted to bring her to this audience. Dr. Savage is a professor of theology at Franciscan University of Steubenville. She is a student of St. Thomas Aquinas and a recognized scholar of the work of Karo Waitiwa, also known as Pope St. John Paul II. Her work is informed by both her academic scholarship and her work experience in the business sector, where she spent 25 years prior to pursuing her doctorate. In both her research and her teaching, Dr. Savage seeks to bridge the gap between theory and practice, theology and culture, and her mission is to recover a culture of life. She did some initial work academically, looking at the principles of Catholic social thought, the relationship between faith and work. And then, inspired by a 1999 encyclical Evangelii Vitae, written by Pope St. John Paul II, she got more and more into feminism and the relationship between men and women, the Catholic vision of the human person, the nature of man, nature of women, complementarity, and all these kinds of things. So she is just a wonderful guest to have. She has so much wisdom and so much practical experience as well. In fact, this episode that I recorded was so awesome, I had to split it into two. So the first chunk, we're going to talk about sort of men and women, masculine and feminine geniuses. We're going to talk about complementarity and, strangely, oddly, other provocative topics that really shouldn't be provocative, but they are. And Dr. Savage has no problem speaking the truth from her perspective, which I'm grateful for. So that is episode 1. And then episode 2 is going to get into really the holiness of work, artificial intelligence, and human flourishing, and other topics related to the workplace. So buckle up. There is some wonderful insights from both of these episodes. So enjoy. Dr. Deborah Savage, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
It's a real honor. I really appreciate it. I want to just jump right in because I first heard you from many years ago speaking about something called the War on Men.
Yeah.
And I think you were speaking at Franciscan University. And I'm just curious. I mean, a lot of time has passed since you were maybe initially talking about that. And I'm curious if the War on Men is still happening. And if it is, maybe how it's changed over the last number of years.
Yeah, I would say it's still very much going on.
Yeah.
And there's lots of data to support that. I mean, the suicide rate, just if you want to just go with that, has increased dramatically for men in general, has increased dramatically since its low point in, I think, what was it, 1999. It's gone up 27%, just suicide rates for men since then. And another bit of data I found, which is really important, the suicide rate for men is like 75 to 80% of all suicides are men. But what's particularly interesting is that 68% of that figure is white males. And so it's really not, you're sort of a liability. You have a liability if you're a white male these days, because we all probably don't need to rehearse all the reasons why that's so. So men are sinking, and there's lots of evidence of that. If anyone that's listening could look for a really interesting list for every 100 girls. Or even if you just put in boys, it'll come up, and it's a list that details for every 100 girls that are in college or graduate from college, there's like 50 men. And it goes through all the lists. For every 100 girls that are in prison, there are 900 something men.
Yeah.
Just think about 97% of all work-related deaths are men. It's mostly men who die in war. What's really so blind among our population, and you could blame it all on feminism, but it's just a general blind spot, I'd say, is we've forgotten to realize, we don't realize the kinds of contributions that men have made throughout history are absolutely, without question, the reason that we're here talking.
You started with some of the stats, which I think anybody who has an eye to see or an ear to hear will see those stats. And I mean, anecdotally, it's tragic to say this, but I'm somewhat proximate to 2 recent suicides of men, which,
Oh,
looking from the outside in, you can't understand how a man in their position would get to a place where that was considered the next step. It's
right.
so tragic, and just
It really,
everything that
yeah.
is the consequence, around it. So, first of all, thank you for advocating, because when a woman is advocating for the plight, for the, state of men right now, it's
Hmm.
advocating and it's not whining. So that's good.
That's a good point. I can say things that you can't
Absolutely. But they have to
about
be said.
you, and they have to be said. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I do think that it's almost getting to a point of willful blindness now, because the
Right.
stats are so utterly clear. Now, you have talked about sort of the masculine genius, and I wanted to just hone in on this, because you and I both know that there's something about the nature of men that is good, true, beautiful, that is to be offered to the world as a gift that is to be cherished and revered and respected and welcomed. And each of us have a vocation as men to make that a sincere gift.
Yeah.
And yet, I think it's that very thing about men that is good, true, and beautiful and complementary to women that is under the most attack,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's
Oh,
diabolical,
definitely.
right?
Yeah. Oh, the whole thing is, yes.
Absolutely. Maybe say some more, that, there is an enemy at play here that wants
Yeah.
us to go after the very essence that is good about men.
Well, I saw on your list of questions I should think about, you asked also, is there a war on women?
Yes.
And absolutely, there's a war on the human person being waged above our heads by principalities and powers and the powers of the forces of good. It's obvious.
Mm,
The evil one has infiltrated right at the spot. He's still at the same spot he was at in the garden,
mm,
interfering with the relationship between man and woman, with their identities, with their understanding of each other. We could come back to that.
mm,
And he knows exactly where to get us, right? So yes, we are all under attack, which is the really sad thing about this, because there's a what they call the manosphere now, where there's men that are saying kind of scary things, and
yeah.
very angry men. It's obvious that they're angry, reacting to the push from the so-called feminists, which is a disputed term
Yeah.
these days in Catholic circles too, but a perception that women are that it's a struggle for power. Let's just
Right.
put it, yeah, and that somehow somebody's got to win. I understand why they're angry. I do, but it's really a misplaced anger. I was on a podcast with one of those angry young men
Mm.
once. And the first time I was on, he wanted to speak about Catholic feminism. I said, I don't really know what that is, but okay. And I came on, and he wouldn't let me speak. He was so
Mm.
angry. And he got a lot of pushback for that. He actually got feedback on YouTube or whatever. So he asked me back.
Oh.
And I said, I'd be happy to come back, but I didn't want to talk about feminism. I want to talk about the masculine genius.
Mm.
And he said, "The masculine genius." Okay, he hadn't heard about it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I explained to him. And I don't want to sound like patronizing or something, but the tone completely changed.
Mm.
Because obviously, when you recognize a man that, for the gift that he is, he's no longer on the defensive. And if it's sincere and full throated and informed by real truths about man, his reaction is, "Thank you."
How would you describe, maybe just for listeners, how would you
Yeah.
explain the masculine genius?
Yes. Well, I'm a follower, I'm a scholar of Wojtyła JP2, of course.
Mm.
I began my research into, well, years ago, people started asking me to give talks about the feminine genius, right? And when
Mm.
that started to surface.
Yeah.
And so I did. referring to his work and everything. And I have my own insights into it because I've been a woman all my life. And so I have a lot. It's
That's
kind of
good.
funny. Yeah, there definitely is one. And but what I noticed was that, especially when wine was involved, let's say if it was over a dinner talk or
Yep.
something, what it turned into was a strange kind of Catholic feminism, where we would talk about how stupid our husbands were. And wasn't it funny that you're the one that always remembered the schedule, the backpack, to put the library book in the backpack, to pick up the kid. Yeah. And I finally, I said, and it didn't take me long to say, I'm sorry, I don't speak about that anymore, because that was a dangerous road to go down. And we're still on that road, which is crazy to me. So I started to pursue the idea there has to be a masculine genius, because a woman's vocation is built into her body, even if she doesn't want children, even if she never has them.
Yeah.
Her task is to care for all of humanity,
Mm.
says John Paul, right?
Yeah.
But man has to pick.
Mm.
He looks outside of himself. He has to choose. He has to discover what his gift is. So do women. So, you have to be careful how far you take this. But to be a man is a lonely
Mm.
road.
Mm.
And that's one of the reasons why I know you had a question about David Blankenhorst's book,
Yeah.
which is a fantastic book, still absolutely priceless and valid. If anything, the data he includes has gotten worse.
Yeah. It's proven out more.
Yeah, but that's one reason why young men need their fathers to show them the way.
How important, how central to the masculine genius is the ability to confer identity? You gave the example of Adam, naming the animals. Even just
Yeah,
recently, we celebrated, the Feast of the Nativity of John the Baptist. And of
yeah,
course, mom names him, but they look to dad and dad says his name is John. And there's a
right.
definitiveness to that, right? There's an identity
Absolutely.
being procured or
Yeah,
being placed. And I mean, the perfect storm is that because so many men who find themselves fathers have not been fathered in a healthy environment whereby their identity was, emphasized and cherished and affirmed and all that, they don't know how to do that. So this
yeah,
is another, kind of underlying reason why the attack is so pronounced with men, you know, confused and angry and,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
there's not a solid identity. But how
yeah.
important is that identity giving nature of man to the masculine genius?
It's actually, I'm so glad you brought that up. It's essential
Mm.
to grasp that the family situation, it's the man that gives the child, his and her, both boy and girl, their identity. And the reason for that is because the man illuminates for the child that they came from somewhere, not just their mommy's tummy, but they were
Mm.
begotten.
Yeah.
Man is the other,
Mm.
and he stands apart from the relationship between the mother and the child. Illuminates this very important fact that that child has an origin beyond the biological reality of
Mm.
popping out of mommy's tummy. He's symbolic, or he's what his meaning is
Mm.
that he gives the child a set. The child cannot pretend that they created themselves, that
Yeah.
they just popped out of mommy's tummy and there they were and they're this great gift to the world. Cardinal Angelo Scola, in his book Nuptial Mystery, talks about this and says the man's task is to teach the child what he calls the law of exchange.
Mm.
He says there's two laws that each child, boy or girl, must understand if they're to be a flourishing human being: the law of exchange and the law of gratuity. And the woman communicates the law of gratuity to the child through her absolutely unconditional love of the child, right? Which sometimes prevents her from allowing the child to take necessary risks, right?
Yes.
The man's task is to illuminate for the child the law of exchange, which is basically that you have to give something back.
Mm-hmm.
This great gift of life obligates you and all the gifts you've been given obligates you to make something of yourself, to become who you're meant to be. The presence of the Father is a call to the child to put something on the line. This is one reason why Blankenhorn's was prophetic,
Mm,
as you asked in your list of questions. Definitely prophetic, because 25% of all children in the United States are without a father in the home.
mm,
And so when you wonder what's going on in places like Chicago or gang violence, what's the source, what's the cause of that? It is absolutely traceable to the fact that so many families don't have a father in the home.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you're familiar a little bit with one of our famous Canadians, Dr. Jordan Peterson.
Sure.
And he's been saying very similar things. He actually has a new course on Daily Wire called Parenthood, but he kind of communicated that so much of the woman's role, especially early on, is just total affirmation and delight in the child, and proximity and all the rest of it. But dad is the one who turns him to the world and
That's right.
introduces
Yeah.
this idea of relationship and
Yeah.
mutual exchange and
Yeah.
adding value to people's lives and receiving that as a gift from others, and together we make progress in that way. But if it's only cherished, beloved, with no consequence of behavior, no
Right.
obligation to develop yourself personally,
Yeah.
that's a smothering mother that does not end up with
Yeah.
integrated, contributing children, essentially.
No, I think that's right. Yeah. And it's actually even, I kind of want to say worse than that, in the sense that the child is left
Mm,
with this feeling that he's so important, that he's the center of his own universe, right?
yeah.
After all, my mom really loves me. She never gives up on me. And there's
Hmm.
no one other that who's saying, not good enough,
Yep.
right? Now, mothers, this isn't really fair to mothers, because mothers are very demanding. I'm a
Right.
demanding mother. I mean, so and don't get in the way of a mama grizzly bear
Yeah,
and
for
her
sure.
cub, right? So there's a lot that women contribute to this, but that's really her primary task, is to ensure that child feels nurtured and loved, and that's a gift she gives to the child. As I know now, my daughter's older, for their whole life.
Yeah. I mean, part of what we've been talking about, Dr. Savage, is really another way of explaining the good of complementarity, right? That, so much of the conversation around men and women ends up going towards power, and then it's just off the rails right away, right? But there is a complementarity that is God designed, He created it that way. But when I say complementarity, I know things come to mind. Like, for the listeners, what does that actually mean? I mean, I think you've said, neither man nor woman will find their purpose without the other. There is a complementarity that we should embrace and understand. What does that really mean?
Yeah, that's really the $64,000 question. And so you have to stipulate a couple things before you enter into it. And actually, it would probably have been wise to do this prior to saying anything, because we are in front, when we're talking about man and woman, never mere mortals, right? We're in front of a profound mystery. And so we're nervous about saying anything too definitive, because we don't want to reduce man or woman to this or that characteristic. John Paul II was dead set against that, and anything like that, quite and rightly so. But it doesn't mean we can't say some things,
Hmm.
because we've learned how to say some things about God, and God is a mystery. We're made in his image, ergo, we're mysteries too. Hans Urs von Balthasar says, forget about getting to the bottom of complementarity of that relationship. You'll never be able to reduce it, put it in
Mm,
some kind of formula or anything like that that will illuminate precisely the moment at which this happens, or where that reality is comes to be. He says that's God's work. It's shrouded in mystery. But having said that, in a marriage relationship, let's just start there. It's easiest to see there. What I liken it to, and this makes perfect theological sense, is to the perichoresis of the Trinity, the eternal dance of the persons of the Trinity. They're always in movement, always giving, always receiving. And so, and I teach marriage and I teach this complementarity, course, and the students are always trying to figure it out. And I say, you have to realize that it's really more of a dance like that, not a dance like, Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire. It's more like something always in movement. And anybody who's been married 30 years, I've been married 36, knows that things shift, right? It's not static at all. It's really literally like a constant movement, a sharing, a giving and a receiving, if the relationship is healthy. And so you have to really understand it that way, I think. It's a little bit like I liken it to wave and particle theory, right? That there's something really lawful about that. But having said that, we could maybe put it this way, and this came to me in one of our rare arguments. Andrew said to me at the end of his rant, "You have to remember, honey, I'm the king around here." And I have no idea how I knew to say back, but I did immediately say, "That's quite all right, honey, because I'm the queen." And if you think about it, the king's task is to be surveying the horizon, making sure there's no barbarians at the gate, ensuring the kingdom is, safe and well fed and so on. And the woman's task is really more related to her domain, is the inner life of that family. And what's really sad about our culture is how denigrated that is as well. I mean, the reason we're in the mess we are, it began when women no longer stayed home, right? And I'm all for women pursuing their vocation beyond the boundaries of the household. I mean, I think we have a public vocation, but what we've sacrificed as a result is priceless. We didn't know what we were throwing away until now. We don't no longer have it.
Yeah.
So that's and then one final step that I'll declare is that man's genius is in this capacity he has for labor, for taking the goods of creation and putting them at the service of his family, right?
Yes.
He sacrifices himself. It's the priestly office of Christ, frankly. He sacrifices himself for his family, right? Woman's task is to remind the man and all of humanity that at the end of every act of self-gift has to be another person. You cannot make of yourself a gift to a bottom line, a project in the garage, a baseball game, football, whatever. You can only make of yourself a gift to another person. And all human flourishing, the woman's task is to remind us that all human flourishing, all human activity must be ordered toward human flourishing. So woman, absolutely her task. JP2 says the moral authority of women shows up when lives are at stake, when woman's sense of justice and fairness and the way in which she regards humanity with love, where that influence needs to be felt and felt strongly, right?
Yeah.
And that's missing so much from our world now because everybody's so many of us are trying to act like men. We're reducing ourselves to our productive capacity.
Something you said early on when we first started talking about complementarity really struck me. How there's a mystery to it. There's a mysterious dimension to it because God is, we've understood some things of God, but not everything. And we are made in his image, imago Dei, and therefore there's a mysterious element to us. And I think that's really important to keep in mind, especially when we start throwing around terminology, because trying to get to the essence of it, the bottom of it, so much will be lost. I was actually, what came to mind was, I think it was John of the Cross who said something to the effect of, biblical scholars have uncovered many mysteries and devout souls have sought to understand them, but the greater part still remains unknown.
Oh, yeah.
And there's an
Yeah.
appreciation to
Yeah.
men and women that we can't be put in boxes, nor should we.
No.
So
Right.
unkind. Right. And not only that, but to acknowledge there's a bit of a, I don't know if the word is continuum, but there are more men who are even more object minded, perhaps, and some are more relational, and there's more women that are, there are
Yeah.
women that become engineers. There's
Sure. Yeah.
continuum to it.
Right. No, that's right. And it's really that's what makes it hard, difficult to say things in general, right?
Yeah.
The neuroscience is very helpful here. The discoveries in neuroscience, especially the structures of the brain
Right.
and so on. And it's just the men's brains are structured and they work differently than women's.
Yeah.
A man's brain is organized front to back. This is a little too glib, but it's basically that. Whereas woman's is sort of right and left brain. There's more connections between the
Mm-hmm.
right and left hemispheres of the brain. And the neuroscientists that I work with tell me that that's not really right. It's just different parts of the brain light up, right? It's not necessarily the right and the left, but there are these different kinds of intelligences that are associated with these parts
Yeah.
of the brain. And that's just a fact. In fact, a recent study came out of Stanford where they did additional research into whether or not there's how much overlap really is there between these men and women on these various characteristics, and they discovered there's really very little. I mean, in the terms of the way the brain is structured.
Right.
I'm probably not describing that too well because it's much more complicated than what I just said, but that's another aspect to this study that needs to be brought in.
Yeah.
Is the scientific facts that we're dealing with. It's very evident that men and women are different.
Yeah. Imagine that, eh?
And these differences confuse us because we have assumptions about each other.
Yeah.
But they're actually the source of our fruitfulness.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the real, it's funny because God works all things for good for those who love him, and he makes straight with crooked lines. And I think one of the perhaps long-term benefits, maybe if there's going to be one with all this craziness about men entering women's sports and all that, is to recognize the truth that men and women are different. Can we just acknowledge that, please?
Right.
Are we really trying to deny something that is just so utterly clear? And then learn how to appreciate the differences. That sameness is not the goal. It's mutual appreciation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The fundamental example of diversity, if you're interested in or concerned about diversity, is the difference between man and woman. Right.
Wow.
That's really the only really true category of diversity that human beings can celebrate.
It's so true.
Because everyone else, the identity groups that we have carved out, every single one of them is a human being. Every single one of them is either a man or a woman. Beyond that, it's just those are what philosophers call accidents.
Yeah.
The color of your skin, the culture you grow up in. These are not essential characteristics of the person.
Yeah, absolutely.